Hello, Colin.
I'm well.
This is fun.
Yeah. Thank you for agreeing to be interviewed for the library technician students.
Sure. That's awesome.
Why don't you just go ahead and introduce yourself?
I'm Peggy Williams. I live in Apple Valley, California. I worked as a library media tech and a library clerk at Apple Valley High School here in Apple Valley, California, high desert, San Bernardino County.
Cool.
And I'm the mom of Mr. Colin Williams.
That's right. Wouldn't be here without you.
Very proud of him. You.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of our students are interested in going into schools. We have a new class coming up in fall, which helps students look at youth services and working with kids.
Okay.
Let's see. Why don't we just start with the question, why did you decide to become a library technician?
Well, I got married kind of late. I got married when I was 30 years old. And previous to that, I'd had a number of jobs and made pretty good money. I had gotten my bachelor's degree in Parks and Recreation. So I worked at state parks, and then I morphed into working for Caltrans and Water Resources, both state occupations. But then I met my husband and moved down to Apple Valley, and we got married. And I had my baby boy 9 months later and decided that I wanted to stay home with my children. I was very fortunate because my husband had a good teaching job and we were able to do that. So I had Colin, and then when he started to go to school, I had my daughter, and I started volunteering in the elementary school where Colin was attending. One of my girlfriends and I would switch and each watch the younger child while the other one went in to volunteer. And so then I would start going with the classes to the library. And I was like, wow, I could do this. This is pretty cool. You know, I could do this kind of job. And I started thinking about it as the kids started getting older. And I thought it would be a perfect job because it went with the schedule of my children. And I've always loved reading. I've always been an avid reader. When I was a kid, my mom would kick me out of the house on a Saturday and say, go do something outside. So, you know, I was really into it. And I was really into helping children find things that they would enjoy reading and that would hook them.
Where did you go to school? And what were the factors of you choosing to go there?
Well, you mean college?
For library tech.
Oh, I went to San Bernardino Valley College, and the reason I went there was it was just down the hill from Apple Valley. It was about an hour drive, and I carpooled with 3 other ladies. We were all going to get our AA in library science because Apple Valley Unified School District started asking the people that worked in the library to have some sort of certificate or associate's degree in library science. So it was night school, and I was able to go down there with my friends, and my husband was home to watch the kids. So I was able to do that. And, you know, I was really fortunate. I've been very fortunate in my life. During the day, I could just study my butt off because I wasn't working yet. Whereas my friends, they were all working. So because I wasn't hired yet, I had the opportunity to really study well and learn the information about running a library, a school library.
I don't even remember you studying during the day.
Yes, that's because you were in school.
Oh, okay. Or going to school at night. I don't remember that.
Yeah. Remember when I hurt my knee and I had a knee surgery?
Mm-hmm.
I was doing it then too. And actually during that time I was substitute teaching also, and continued to volunteer in the classroom. And as I was a substitute teacher, I subbed in all of the different grade levels, elementary, middle school, high school. And that was how I came to know what age level I wanted to teach, because I spent so much time with each of the grades. And it was my thought that I would really like to be in the high school. I loved high school kids. They were so full of energy and so much fun, and they had great senses of humor. And I could reason with them, you know, even when they'd start getting angry and that kind of thing, they were pretty easy to reason with. So that's when I decided, well, I would like to work in the high school library.
Mm. Did you have to take any special kind of class to prepare for a high school setting, or?
No, not in this case. When getting the certificate or the associate's degree, it was all the same basic classes everybody had to take. There was like acquisitions, there was cataloging, there was book care and repair, library media services, introduction to library. What else? There were other ones. Let me see, where is that page? Oh, library technical services, where we learned about computers. When I was doing this, the internet hadn't started yet. So when I first started working in libraries, we were working with the computers with CDs, and the reference material like encyclopedias or newspapers, or not newspapers, magazine sources, all of those were on CDs, and we would let the CDs check them out to the students, and they'd go to the computers. But it wasn't even the internet, you know, I'm dark ages.
I remember Encarta being on a CD-ROM, and you would have to load in the different sections because not all of it could fit on a single CD.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was dark ages. What other classes did I take? Let me see. Pretty much that was it. Repair of materials. Oh, acquisitions.
So I remember you fixing a lot of books at the high school. Is that something that's pretty typical for a media technician to do? Is that something they might need to know?
Yeah, well, in my case it was, because our school district, the library hierarchy was different than if you have a mastered librarian and then technicians and that kind of thing. So in our school district, we were the librarian at each of the schools. So for all of us, we had to know how to do the book repair and care. And I did a lot of it through my years working there. At the time, the budget was very poor for libraries, and I think even the county libraries had limited hours. This was the early 2000s, end of, I think I got hired there in 97. 96 or 97. So there wasn't a lot of funds for libraries, so we had to do a lot of repair. And that was something that I learned to do. I became pretty good at it.
Yeah, I remember that little kind of workshop in the back, and you had eventually you upgraded to the shelves that would open and close like the accordions.
Oh yeah. Well, repairing the books, we had the book press, remember? And
Yeah.
I would repair the books and stack them and crank it down so that they were pressed and doing what they needed to do. But yeah, that was what happened in California. Was libraries were given a grant, a huge amount of money, I believe in the year 97, 98, 98, 99, and maybe into 2000, but it started tapering off. And we received a lot of funds to help bring libraries back up to standard. A lot of the books that we had in our high school library, I weeded. They were books that had been donated by teachers from the beginning of when the school opened, which was like in the 60s, and they were college level books. So we just went through and weeded a bunch of books, and we were purchasing new books. It was a really exciting time. It was a lot of fun.
How big was the collection?
Oh, I don't know, maybe we had maybe 15,000 items. I don't know. I don't remember really.
Can you talk a little bit more about the hierarchy? That's something that we look at in one of our classes. Like, was there a culture of tension, or like you said, hierarchy between librarians and library techs?
Well, yes. And when I was working in the high schools, many districts only limited their hires to like library media techs or library clerks. And I'm not talking college level. This is all secondary level and elementary. And I went to a lot of the ALA conferences. I loved going to those because we learned a lot about how to deal with things in the library. It was great extra education. Plus, it was great to hear ideas from other people, especially people who were mastered librarians, because they had more experience in terms of they probably worked in bigger libraries. They were also like working in colleges. So we got a lot of good background. But because of that, and because I had already had my bachelor's degree, I understood kind of both sides of the coin. There was friction between librarians and the clerks and the techs. The mastered librarians felt that they were much more qualified, and some people would project that in how they talk to others that weren't mastered. So that caused technicians and media techs to feel less valued, I think is what it was coming down to, is people felt less valued. But not every librarian behaved like that. I made some good friends of district librarians. They were wonderful. And I've sometimes wondered why was it that I was able to get along better than others? And maybe it was because they knew I had a bachelor's, and a lot of the women or young men I worked with, they didn't have their bachelor's. So I think even working in a school, teachers value people less if they don't have an education. This isn't just in libraries. Teachers would value the classified workers less because they didn't have their degree. And, you know, these women or men were just as smart as some of the librarians, but for whatever reason in their life, they never had the opportunity to go and further their education. So I understood that side of the coin as well. There is that tension. And library media techs and library clerks, you know, they would get upset about not having the compensation that mastered librarians would get. But, you know, I understood that when you do further your education and you do get your master's or even your PhD, those people do deserve a higher compensation. They have invested more in their intellectual education. So there, you know, there was that division.
Can you talk about, I didn't prepare you for this, but can you talk about what happened during the time of budget cuts and how the district restructured the library setting and what happened to you because of that?
Yeah. So that was about 2010. I think you'd already graduated.
Yeah.
And I think Eileen had already graduated. That's my daughter. There were budget cuts in California, and a number of people lost their jobs, including teachers and classified employees. And in secondary and elementary schools, not colleges, I've never worked at a college, so I don't know the structure, but you have your classified personnel, which would be the secretaries, the administrative assistants, the librarians, the career center people. Those are called classified. They're covered by a different union. And then there was the certificated personnel, and those were the teachers. They had their certificates. So during these budget cuts, a number of teachers were laid off and things got shuffled around with teachers. You know, in our system, one teacher could bump another one out of another school if the higher teacher, the hierarchy of the teacher had more years. Same thing with classified. At the time, right before they started laying people off that year, I had just moved into the career center. I had made a job change. I left the library and went into the career center. And then they did the budget cuts. And I got bumped out of the career center by the woman who was in there previously. And so I should have been bumped back to the library. However, because of the budget cuts, the district laid off more than half of the librarians and kept the more senior, not librarians, the library media techs. They laid them off, and they kept the more senior media techs and had them work 2 schools each. And it was not good. You know, people didn't like it. It was difficult. It was very stressful. Eventually, 10 months later, they found money, or they had it in reserve. So they started hiring people back, and I was hired back into the Career Center. Can I tell you why I went to the Career Center out of the library?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this is interesting. Before, I loved being in the library. I absolutely loved it. I loved helping kids find books that would catch their interest. I worked a lot with students who were not avid readers. They had reading problems. So I would try to find them books that would catch their interest and get them to start enjoying reading, because by the time the kids are in high school, it's just like they're pissed that they can't read and they don't even want to read. So you have to try to get them something that will catch their interest, especially these young men. They were tough too. But what happened is we automated our textbooks. It used to be the teachers would check books out to students, because they all had, like, you know, it was the teachers would get all the books. They'd check them out to all the kids in their classroom. They'd keep cards, and that's how we did it. Well, the summer before this, they had automated all the textbooks. So I was now not only the library media tech, but I was also a textbook repository person. And I hated it. It was awful. The books were heavy. Some of them weighed 7 pounds. And there was a lot of loss, and that bothered me, not being able to get all these textbooks back and knowing that, you know, we were losing all this money, like a lot of money. It was crazy. Kids, we started having a lot of transient students whose parents moved around a lot. So you would lose things, you would lose books. So that's why I ended up going to the Career Center, because in the library, I was doing much less hands-on work with the students, and I was more just behind the computer and dealing with inventory of these textbooks and calling parents to try to get them to return it. It was no more fun.
It sounds like you like working with people over technology.
Well, you know, I love working with people. I used to when I was young. I did a lot of things that I worked with people. When I worked in the parks, it was dealing with the public. When I worked with water resources, I was doing land surveying work, and you had to work closely with a crew. We had a lot of fun. When I was young, I loved working with people. I absolutely loved it. As I've gotten older, I started getting more into the quietness of working with technology. But, you know, all my whole career, I worked with people. I loved it working with the kids in the Career Center. Yeah. I love to have fun, and the kids liked that.
Yeah, you were really good with the kids. You, in that space, you provided them opportunity to have their clubs set up with the chess club. I remember all those Magic and the Pokemon and the card games were going on.
Yeah, and we called it the Open Book Club, and it was for kids that love to read and talk about different books. Yeah, that was fun. I used to do things like during lunchtime, and this is at a high school. I would read books to the kids, like during the different seasons, books that were particular to the season, and the students could get extra credit. Some of their teachers would give them extra credit for coming in and listening. I would hold after school readathons that would go till 7 at night, and everybody would be in there reading. We'd order pizza and sodas, and we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, I remember that.
That was you and Eileen were little, and you'd come and do it with us.
Yeah,
it was fun.
Wow. Yeah, good memories. Okay. I also wanted to ask you, what are important skill sets for being a library tech in a school setting in particular? What would you recommend students do if they want to learn how to operate in a school setting? What kind of skills do they need?
You mean like secondary and elementary?
Yeah.
Well, you have to recognize that everyone's different. And one of the lessons I learned later in my years is that not only is everybody different, but they come from different backgrounds. You can't assume things about people. That was a real epiphany for me. What happened was I was really upset at this young man who returned a book that was kind of beaten up, and it smelled like cigarettes, and it was awful. And I was like kind of in his face, like, you need to respect these things. And all of a sudden I was looking in this boy's eyes, and I was like, wow, I don't even know who this child is. I don't know what his parents are like. And here I'm being mean about a book. And I think it's very important for people who are going to work in any kind of setting where you're dealing with people, is to recognize that they're not you, and that you have to try to elicit a feeling for or information from them as to who they are so that you can communicate best with them. That's really, really important. We're all individuals, and we all have different ideas of what's valuable. And we can impart those ideas to others, but instead of like beating them over the head with it, there's an analogy I like where, and I think it was from the Bible, and sorry everyone, I at any rate, what it was Paul, the apostle, was explaining to people that to bring people to their faith, they had to walk across the bridge from where they stood to where the others were. They have to walk across that bridge and meet them on their own ground and in their mode of understanding, etc., and then bring them back over the bridge. And I always like that analogy because I think that's a good way to teach people, not theology, but just about life. So at any rate, you have to have good interpersonal communication skills. It's important to be punctual, because you have to have that library open when it needs to be. You have to be willing to carry on all aspects of the job in the schools. Even if you are just a tech person, you still have to open yourself up to be able to go out there and deal with the students, because that's in schools, I think that's at least 3/4 or more of what the job is there, is to relate to the kids and bring them to the knowledge and give them the information that they can use to continue progressing in life and doing well for themselves. I think you have to have some organizational skills. Not everybody is organized, and in the school district I worked in, you could tell the difference between those who embraced organization and those that didn't. And so for me, I was more organized, but I wasn't organized to the 10th degree. And I knew people who were much less organized. So it's easier. It makes the flow of the library and the function of what you're doing run smoother if you have good organizational skills. You have to not be afraid of technology. And I don't think people in this day and age are anymore. That was an issue in my day. People didn't like getting into technology. You have to be open to change.
Yeah, I think that you do what you said in the middle of your answer about relating to students. I think you did a wonderful job with that.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. I feel like a lot of the kids and the friends that I had felt like the library was a safe space because of the person that you were and the opportunities that you gave them to be comfortable in themselves. And then the other skill you said about being punctual, I have to apologize for not waking up every morning and making you late sometimes. I was in high school.
Well, a lot of that was my fault too.
So what, thinking about your job as a library tech, what motivated you to succeed? It kind of sounds like dealing with students and helping them was a strong motivation for you.
Oh, absolutely. That was the motivation. It was to help the kids become better able to deal with the world they're going to walk out into. And it was not only dealing with students who had poor reading skills and trying to help them get hooked, but it was also with students that excelled, like an AP kid, and how you could challenge them to do, to make them challenge themselves to do more and more, and give them information that will quench their thirst, and yet still teach them that there are always things you can do to learn more and more.
Yeah.
What was your question?
What motivated you to succeed at your job?
It was the kids. It was people.
Yeah.
Also, I think I have always liked to do a good job. If you start, my dad always said, if you start something, you got to finish it. And that was, part of working with people and being in schools, is you were there to help other people. And that was my motivation. And I love books.
Yeah.
I loved talking about the books to the kids.
If you could go back and do it all again, would there be something you would change?
Yeah, I would, because I had already had my bachelor's degree. When I started taking library science classes, one of the librarians, the head librarian at San Bernardino Valley, encouraged me instead to get my master's. And at the time, we were able to do that through Fullerton and get our master's through San Jose State. But I would had to have gone down to Fullerton every Saturday. And I didn't want to do that because you guys were so young. I wanted to be with you. I loved being with you guys. So Saturday and Sunday was always, the day, the good time. So I didn't do it. I regret that I didn't do it at that time, because and then the second thing I would change is, by the time that Eileen was in high school and like you were a senior, I should have gone ahead and done it at that time, because your dad was home on the weekends. He could, help direct you and that kind of stuff. It would have been an okay time to make that change then. The reason I would go back and get my master's is because the salary would be so much better. And I would have been able to save more for retirement, and I would have had a better pension because my salary, that was a big one. But another reason for it was I would have been more challenged, I think, doing more work like at a college library. I would have had to try to get into Victor Valley College here, because our district did not hire librarians. We didn't even have district librarians. There was a time, at the time when you guys were in high school, where I tried talking to the district about, the value of having a district librarian and having that central figure to help monitor and conduct business at the other libraries. But they thought about it, but they decided no, they didn't want to spend the money. So that would be, I would have got that.
Well, do you have any advice for the students, or was there anything we didn't talk about that you were hoping to share?
One of the questions that you asked me, well, first of all, one of the questions you asked me is, does it matter what grade level you'd be working with? I think it really does matter to try to find that grade level that you fit with. And I had the opportunity to do that because I was a substitute teacher. So I would recommend students shadow different librarians in different settings and see which one they thought felt better for them, where they felt more at ease and able to communicate. There's a difference between a third grader and a 11th grader. So I think that's important for students to explore what grade level they want to work with. Let's see.
And shadowing and internships can be a good part of helping to figure that out.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't know if we did this with you, but we had our daughter job shadow speech and language pathologist, because that was something she was thinking she might wanted to do. So we helped set that up for her, and that really helped cement in her mind that that was something that she would like to do. You know, kids go to school. When we're young, we go to school, and sometimes we think we want to do something, but by the time you're done with your degree, you're going, I don't want to do that. And that's expensive. It's expensive money-wise, and it's expensive time-wise. So I really encourage job shadowing and or internships. You don't have to do it as an internship. You could talk to someone, introduce yourself, and say, I would like to come in for a few days or a week and be with you during this time, and see how you do your job, what it is that I could look at to see if this is something that I would enjoy doing. I really encourage that. Let's see. Okay, I think you asked one question about what piece of advice I could give to students that are in the program.
Yeah.
Okay, what that would be is, I know everybody comes from different situations. I was, like I said earlier, very fortunate to be married, and my husband had a really good job, so I was able to take that time and explore. I had already had my bachelor's degree. So if a student in the program is thinking that they would like to work at a college level, I would encourage them to get their bachelor's degree and then also their master's degree. And I would do that when I was young. I would do that when I was a young person. Your brain is able to take in all that information without that much stress. It's like elastic, and you can deal. The older we get, the harder it is, it seems, to pick up new things. So I would do it when I'm young. If there's a person out there that was similar to me, that's maybe raising children, and they're wanting to do library science, they want to be a library media tech or what have you, do it. And if you have the ability and want to complete it and get your bachelor's degree, do it when you're young. And it means, yes, you would have to spend more time away from your young children. But as I've raised my children, I've learned when the guys are young, they're much more resilient to the parent being away, and they do well with good babysitters. But when kids start getting into middle school age, that's when there's so much going on in a child's mind and emotions. It's very important for a parent to be there and talk to them and listen to them. And also in high school, you have to have one of the parents be there for them when they need them. That means it makes it much more difficult to go back to school when your children are older. You don't want to lose your little guys when they're in high school or middle school. You got to be there for them. That's my advice.
And
if you don't have kids, go as far as you can.
Yeah, and so that's in the context of getting the master's degree to become.
Yeah, if you really want to be in the library world, I would get my master's degree. Absolutely, because you could be hired at a college, you can be hired in a number of high school districts. I would really recommend getting at least your master's, and trying to get on a schedule that once you do have children, you're home with them. That was another cool thing about working in the library. If I didn't say that before, I'd be with you guys when you were off.
Yeah, on the same schedule.
Yes, on the same schedule.
Well, I'm thankful for all the life choices that you made.
Oh.
It helped to prepare me to get into the world of library science. You're a big inspiration for why I decided to become a librarian.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very cool.
I'm glad that you took the time to talk to the students, because hopefully some of what you've shared can help to inspire them to become their best selves.
I hope so. I think it's a good job for people who are introverted and extroverted, because if you can separate the two, because the introverted people can get into the technology end of it, and the extroverted are the ones that are going out there helping the people in the library, and it's a wonderful opportunity. Yeah.
Thanks for giving such a balanced and fun interview, Mom. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. I love doing it for you. to all you students out there, I wanted this young man to be the next Steven Spielberg, but he chose differently. But he tells me that in his library job, he's able to accomplish the things that he loves. He loves to be a creative writer. He loves to film. He's doing all of that. He uses music in his videos, I believe, that he has worked on and composed. So he's doing everything that he says he wants to do, and I'm very happy about that.
Good. All right, Mom. Well, thanks. I love you.
Are you going to edit that?
Yeah,
No, keep it in there.
I will.
I love you.
I love you too.
Okay.
All right. I'll talk to you later.
Okay.
Thanks
Bye-bye.
again.